Ruined fortresses, half-buried monuments, and eerie hints of vanished people. History's full of mysterious cultures that blinked out and left us holding only fragments of their stories. Some mastered epic engineering, others soared on booming trade, yet every last one collapsed into silent rubble. Let's head into the chilling realm of civilizations that seemed unstoppable until they disappeared without a trace. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have the Cucuteni Tropilians. There is something unsettling about colossal prehistoric towns that once teemed with people, only to end up as deserted ruins under the earth. The Cucuteni Tropilians emerged around 4800 BC in what is now Ukraine, Moldova, and Romania, building some of the largest Neolithic settlements in Europe. Evidence suggests their population might have grown to tens of thousands in single megasites, an unheard of figure for that period. They created sophisticated pottery with swirling, almost hypnotic designs, and raised vast communal structures meant to protect both people and livestock. Then, sometime before 3000 BC, everything changed. Many of these elaborate settlements were burned or simply left behind, leaving behind precious few clues as to why. Some blame climate change and resource depletion, others talk of invasions or internal turmoil. All that remains are eerie house rings, decorated pottery shards, and unanswered questions about how such a vibrant culture could vanish so completely. In our number 9 spot today, we have Mycenaean Greece. Towering fortress palaces, gold masks fit for gods, and epic tales that inspired the legends of the Trojan War, Mycenaean Greece had all the hallmarks of a mighty civilization. From around 1700 to 1050 BC, the Mycenaeans constructed massive citadels like Messenia, Tiryns, and Pylos, forging an advanced bureaucracy, intricate art, and a far-reaching trade network that touched Egypt and the Near East. Yet, around 1200 BC, their fortified cities came crashing down in a wave of destruction scholars still can't fully explain. Some blame brutal invasions by mysterious sea peoples, while others point to famine, internal strife, or natural disasters. What's chilling is how these fearsome palace states crumbled into disorganized communities seemingly overnight. Their once proud palaces, famed in Homer's epics, became haunted ruins, and Greece slid into a dark age where even writing seemed to disappear for centuries. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Nuragic civilization. Strange, tower-like strongholds built with giant stones scattered across the rugged Sardinian landscape. These are the Nuragi, the only real proof left of the mysterious Nuragic people. Flourishing between 1800 and 500 BC, the Nuragic civilization left behind thousands of cyclopean stone towers, some towering 5 stories high, along with elaborate villages hidden inland. They were masters of bronze working and seafaring, exporting goods across the Mediterranean. But even with trade ties stretching from Iberia to the Aegean Sea, their society waned under the pressure of the Carthaginian and then Roman dominance. It's almost as if their monumental architecture grew silent, overshadowed by new conquerors. To this day, no written records tell their tale. Only the stark silhouettes of those mighty towers stand as sentinels to a once thriving people swallowed by time. Next, we are talking about the Aksumite Empire. High in the Ethiopian highlands, Aksum grew into a powerful empire that controlled trade routes linking Rome, Arabia, and even distant Asian kingdoms. Beginning around the 1st century CE, its capital boasted towering stelae, massive carved obelisks, alongside palatial architecture that screamed wealth and sophistication. Aksum was among the first African states to mint its own coins, and its rulers adopted Christianity around the 4th century, making it a beacon of faith in sub-Saharan Africa. Yet by the 8th century, this proud empire had all but faded. Some blame resource depletion and soil exhaustion. Others point to shifting trade routes following the rise of Islamic powers controlling the Red Sea. Whatever the cause, Aksum Gruesome's grand monuments and cryptic inscriptions endure as monuments to a once glorious kingdom that abruptly lost its hold on history. Next, we are talking about Tartessos. Buried somewhere beneath southern Spain's marshy lands lies the ghost of Tartessos, a kingdom so wealthy it was sometimes compared to the fabled Atlantis by ancient writers. Archaeologists say the Tartessians thrived from around 1100 to 600 BC, dominating the trade in precious metals like silver and tin. Their advanced metallurgy and rumored stockpiles of gold drew merchants from across the Mediterranean. Phoenicians, Greeks, you name it. Oddly, around the 6th century BC, Tartessos vanished from historical records as if it had never even existed, leaving behind a handful of artifacts and faint echoes of myths. Scholars have suggested everything from ecological catastrophe to conquest by Carthage, yet tangible proof remains elusive. Today, with every newly excavated site and new piece of ancient metalware, the riddle of Tartessos grows even more haunting, a once glorious kingdom swallowed by the shifting sands. Next, we are talking about the Guanches. Off the coast of North Africa, the Spanish Canary Islands once belonged to the Guanches, a mysterious people who likely arrived thousands of years ago. They herded goats, cultivated fields, and mummified their dead, keeping a culture that seemed cut off from the rest of the world. Then, in the 15th century, the Spanish arrived. In a shockingly swift campaign, they conquered the islands, and disease and warfare nearly erased the Guanches. Today, only a few caves with mummified remains, bizarre rock art, and faint linguistic echoes survive. It is definitely a haunting cautionary tale, an entire indigenous civilization gone in just a few generations, leaving the Canaries' volcanic landscape dotted with silent tombs. Next, we are talking about the Ba people. Ancient China's Ba people once flourished across the eastern Sichuan and western Hubei provinces, carving out a name for their fearless warriors and powerful chieftains. They appear in records dating back to the Shang dynasty, but their capital's exact location remains uncertain. Some say it's in the gorges of the Yangtze River, others believe it shifted with each new generation of Ba kings. Archaeologists occasionally unearth tombs filled with intriguing bronzes and savage war relics, painting a culture that valued martial skill above all else. By around 316 BC, the Ba had vanished, conquered by expanding states, or possibly undone by internal strife. Nearly 2,000 years of history drifted into obscurity, leaving behind glimpses of an epic tradition of valor and a confounding question: where did these formidable warriors go? Next, we are talking about the kingdom of Tijuana. Squeezed between the mighty Phrygians in the west and the Assyrian Empire in the east, Tijuana, also known as Tyana, held a crucial trade route in ancient Anatolia. Once part of the Hittite domain, it later emerged as a small yet powerful Neo-Hittite kingdom. Kings like Warpalas appear in inscriptions paying tribute to the Assyrians while juggling uneasy alliances. Tijuana linked east and west not just in trade, but in the flow of culture. Scholars even suspected the Phoenician alphabet may have traveled to Greece through its territory. Then, in a blink, Tijuana drops out of the historical narrative, replaced by new rulers and overshadowed by bigger empires. Its mysterious disappearance still fascinates archaeologists digging through the remnants of city walls and stelae marked with half-erased scripts. Next, we are talking about the Vinca culture. During Europe's Neolithic age, the Vinca civilization in the Danube region built some of the continent's biggest prehistoric settlements. Spanning parts of modern Serbia, Romania, and beyond, from about 5,400 to 4,500 BC, they created a wealth of dark burnished pottery and intriguing figurines that might be connected to ancient rituals. They even experimented with early copper smelting, a technology unheard of for the era. For unknown reasons, their once thriving mega villages collapsed, replaced by smaller communities, or simply abandoned. Some blame overworked land and resource competition, while others suggest major social turmoil. The Vinca people left behind cryptic symbols that many see as a precursor to writing, little ciphers hinting at beliefs that we can't fully grasp. And finally on our list today we have the Indus Valley Civilization. In the plains of what is now Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus Valley Civilization rose around 3300 BC and built advanced urban centers like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, replete with grid-like streets, complex drainage systems, and standardized weights. For centuries, these thriving river cities traded widely, possibly as far as Mesopotamia. Then, between 1900 and 1700 BC, they dwindled, with entire sites abandoned. The reasons are still hotly debated. Was it a shift in river courses, prolonged drought, or an invasion? There's almost nothing in the way of decipherable text to explain. Despite countless excavations, their story ends in silence. Their once orderly streets turned to dust, and their script an unsolved riddle that archaeologists still scramble to decode.
The Sumerians weren't just one of the first civilizations, they were also one of the strangest. These guys popped up out of nowhere, seemingly, around 3100 BCE in what's now Iraq, bringing with them advanced knowledge of writing, astronomy, and law. And there's also something else they're known for, though. Their myths, more specifically the Anunnaki, beings who came down from the heavens and were said to have given them their knowledge. Now, ancient people talking about receiving knowledge from a higher power isn't all that unique. You're going to hear it more on this list as well, but some think that the Sumerians were actually describing an alien race. See, some of their artwork seems to show figures that look eerily like modern depictions of aliens, tall, slender, and humanoid, but not really, and of course, coming from the sky. They also wrote about these beings, describing how the Anunnaki created humans to do hard labor, like digging canals and working the land. Well, some theorists take their story and say, well, what if creating humans actually meant genetic engineering? Were the Sumerians just writing myth, or were they actually recording something much more literal? Some researchers believe the Sumerians' rapid advancement doesn't make sense without some kind of outside influence either. How did they develop advanced irrigation and the world's first cities almost overnight? And let's not forget their knowledge of the solar system. Some of their texts describe the night sky in ways that were pretty ahead of their time. So is it possible they were getting their astronomy lessons from advanced beings from another planet? You probably don't need me to tell you that the Maya were ahead of their time. They had insanely accurate calendars, complex cities, and a deep understanding of the cosmos, so it probably comes as no surprise that they're often associated with theories about ancient aliens. Here's where a lot of that comes from. Some of their carvings and artifacts look like they're depicting figures in spacesuits. One of the most famous examples is the lid of Pakal's tomb. Some say it shows him piloting what looks like a spacecraft, with buttons and knobs and controls and what looks like a breathing apparatus and flames shooting out at the bottom. Traditional archaeologists say it's just a stylized representation of the afterlife or something, but let's be real, if you showed that carving to someone with zero context, they'd probably say it looks like a dude in some sort of spaceship, or something just advanced for the time. And then there's their obsession with the gods descending from the sky, often depicted with serpentine or bird-like features. Now, was this just fantasy, or were they actually recording encounters with beings from up in space? Their myths even mention beings known as the Star People, who supposedly came down to teach them wisdom. Some of their temples and pyramids also line up with stars and planets in a way that makes it seem like they knew way more about space than you'd think possible for such an ancient society. So were they just a highly advanced civilization, or did they have a little guidance from up above? Ancient Indian texts are full of wild descriptions of these flying machines called vimanas. These weren't just vague mentions of something flying through the sky. These texts go into crazy detail about the mechanics, the weapons, and even the fuel these crafts supposedly used. The Mahabharata and Ramayana talk about epic aerial battles, beams of light that could destroy entire cities, and weapons that sound suspiciously like modern-day nukes. Now, of course, most people think these stories are just myths, but some believe they may have been describing real events, possibly involving extraterrestrial technology. And even stranger, some of these texts describe the Vimanas as being piloted by beings with godlike abilities, often descending from the heavens to interact with humans. Were these just religious visions, or did these ancient people have a more literal understanding of what was going on? Whether or not these texts are just stories, it's pretty cool that they sound more like science fiction than your more traditional mythological tales. The Inca built one of the most impressive empires in history, and they did it without the wheel, iron tools, or a writing system, at least not one we can fully understand. But their stonework is where things get really weird. Sites like Sacsayhuaman have massive, perfectly cut stones that fit together without mortar, almost like a puzzle, and some of these stones weigh over 100 tons, and we still don't know exactly how they moved and shaped them like that. Some say it was just good old-fashioned manpower and ingenuity, but others think they might have had some help. The legends of the Inca mention sky gods who came down and taught them knowledge. Were these just mythological figures, or could they have been something else entirely? The Dogon people of Mali have a knowledge of astronomy that's bizarrely advanced for a tribe that by all accounts shouldn't have had access to telescopes. Specifically, they've known about Sirius B, a white dwarf star invisible to the naked eye, for centuries. Western astronomers didn't confirm its existence until the 20th century, but the Dogon had detailed knowledge about it long before that. They claim they got this information from beings called the Nomo, amphibious, fish-like deities from the Sirius system who came from the sky and brought knowledge. Again, this sounds a lot like extraterrestrial contact, but is it just a myth? Did they just figure out everything they know on their own? Or were they actually visited by beings from the Sirius system? China's mythology is full of sky beings, flying chariots and rulers who claim to be descended from celestial visitors. One of the most famous examples is the Yellow Emperor, who was said to have arrived on a flying dragon and later ascended back into the heavens. Then there are the carvings and artifacts showing figures with elongated skulls and strange non-human features. Some even resemble what modern UFO enthusiasts would call gray aliens. There are also ancient accounts of metallic flying machines, energy weapons, and even what some interpret as nuclear explosions in early Chinese texts. So, again, could these stories be describing actual encounters with extraterrestrials, or are they just highly exaggerated myths? Given China's long history and meticulous record keeping, it's not hard to wonder if some of these stories have more truth to them than we may think. Ancient Greece may not be the first place that comes to mind when thinking about alien contact, but their mythology, their advanced technology, it does make you wonder. The Greeks had gods and beings that descended from the sky, often in glowing chariots or surrounded by radiant light. You could interpret that as something of a UFO encounter. Take Prometheus, for example, who stole fire from the gods and gave it to humanity. Could this be a metaphor for advanced knowledge gifted to early humans by an otherworldly being? Then there's more concrete stuff like the Antikythera mechanism, an ancient analog computer discovered in a shipwreck. This thing was capable of things that wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. Where did the Greeks get this level of understanding? Was it purely because they were just that smart, or is it possible they had some divine inspiration, maybe from beings beyond Earth? Here's another strange little curiosity: accounts of flying shields seen in battle, reported by historians like Herodotus. Was this just dramatic storytelling? Or were ancient Greek soldiers actually seeing aircraft thousands of years before modern UFO reports? The Karasupe civilization in Peru is one of the oldest in the Americas, dating back to around 3000 BCE. Yet they built massive pyramids, had complex urban planning, and even developed a mysterious form of record keeping using knotted strings. They seem to have done this with no outside influence, at least no influence that we know of. Unlike other ancient civilizations, the Karasupe didn't leave behind a lot of warlike artifacts. Signs of massive conflicts, no battle records, just peaceful, advanced city building. Some researchers believe this points to them having had help from a superior intelligence that guided them toward a civilization focused on science and trade rather than conflict and power. There's also the uncanny similarity between their pyramids and those found in Egypt. How did these two civilizations, separated by thousands of miles, come up with the same type of structures? Was it just a coincidence, or were they both following the same blueprint, one that might not have originated on Earth? The Nazca people lived in what's now Peru between 100 BCE and 800 CE, and they left behind something that still baffles people today: these massive geoglyphs known as the Nazca lines. We're talking giant animals, humanoid figures, and geometric shapes all etched into the desert floor. The thing is, you can really only see them from way up in the air. And this is where the alien theories come in. Some believe the Nazca made these lines as messages or landing strips for extraterrestrial visitors. After all, why go through all that effort to make something you couldn't even fully appreciate from the ground? There's also the theory that the Nazca had help from advanced beings who guided them in creating these massive designs. Obviously, there are skeptics who argue that they were purely ceremonial or meant to be seen from surrounding hills, but the fact that some lines stretch for miles and form perfectly straight paths, it does make you wonder who or what were they trying to communicate with? Well, of course, no list of possible alien-influenced civilizations would be complete without ancient Egypt. The pyramids alone have had people speculating things for centuries. These massive structures are so precisely built that modern engineers still aren't completely sure how they were constructed. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is aligned almost perfectly with the true north, and the measurements of its base are oddly connected to the dimensions of the Earth itself. Did the Egyptians really figure this out on their own? Or did someone or something give them the knowledge? Then there are these strange depictions in Egyptian art. Some carvings show beings with particularly large eyes, what look like advanced devices. Even more bizarre are the light bulb carvings in the Dendera temple, which some believe depicted electrical technology. Egyptian mythology also talks about the gods descending from the sky and sharing knowledge with humanity. Were these gods just myths, or were they actual beings from another world? If so, what was their purpose in guiding one of the most powerful civilizations in history? The ancient Egyptians had one of the most elaborate ideas about the afterlife and the structure of reality itself. I mean, they may have not talked about parallel universes in a scientific way, but they did believe in these different layers of existence. One of the most important was the Duat, often called the underworld, a realm of gods, gates, and monsters. Souls had to pass through it to reach the afterlife, and the journey wasn't symbolic. The Egyptians believed that this realm was just as real as the physical one. They also believed the soul had multiple parts, Ka, Ba, etc., and that each part could interact with different planes of existence. The gods themselves traveled freely between these realms. Rituals, spells like the ones in the Book of the Dead, and architecture like the pyramids and tombs were designed to help souls move between these realities. So they didn't see reality as only what was in front of their eyes. They believed there were layers to it. So in that sense, their entire belief system was built around the idea that multiple dimensions or realms existed and could be crossed under the right conditions. The Sumerians were one of the first civilizations to write things down, and their myths are full of ideas that sound like alternate realms. They believed in three primary layers: the heavens, the earth, and the underworld, called Kur. These were seen as real planes of existence that affected your daily life. The gods lived in the heavens, humans lived on Earth, of course, and the dead went to Kur down below. And much like a multiverse concept, these realms could sometimes overlap. In stories like the Descent of Inan, the goddess Inanna travels to the underworld, dies, and then comes back. So they had this idea that entities could move between dimensions. The underworld was also not necessarily evil here, it was just another realm, operating under different rules. In fact, a lot of rituals were focused on keeping the borders between these realms stable, so that chaos wouldn't spill over. But controlled contact was still seen as possible. That's why they built ziggurats as stairways to the gods, not to merge the realms completely, but to create this stable link between heaven and earth. In ancient Indian texts, especially from the Vedic and later Hindu traditions, there is a really detailed breakdown of the universe. Not just one world, but many. They believed in multiple lokas or realms, each with its own purpose and beings. There's Svarga, which is kind of like heaven, Baloka, the earthly realm where we live, and Patala, the underworld. But that's just scratching the surface here, because some texts list 14 worlds, 7 higher and 7 lower, where gods, demons, spirits, and humans all live their lives in different layers of reality. These weren't vague ideas about the afterlife, they were very specific. Each realm was thought to have its own laws, its own beings, and even time was believed to work differently in each one. This weirdly lines up pretty well with modern ideas about how time could flow in alternate dimensions. So while they weren't using the type of language we use with parallel universes today, the Vedic did believe that there were many different realities stacked above and below our own. Same with the ancient Maya. They believed there were multiple levels stacked on top of and beneath the physical world. 13 layers of heaven and 9 layers of the underworld, all connected by something called the world tree. The human world sat in the middle between these layers and everything was connected. The heavens weren't just above the clouds, and the underworld wasn't just underground. These were entire realms, each ruled by different gods and filled with spirits. What makes the Maya unique is how they tied all of this into their daily lives. Their temples and pyramids were built to mirror how they thought the universe was laid out. A step pyramid like the one at Chichen Itza was basically a map of the cosmos, showing the layers of heaven, earth, and the underworld stacked on top of each other. Even the ball game they played was connected to this. In some stories, the game represented a battle between life and death, or this struggle between this world and the next. Rituals, sacrifices, and ceremonies were also meant to keep these realms in balance. And now, ancient Greek mythology. A lot of us read about these stories in school, about all the gods, heroes, and creatures that would travel between different realms. Of course, you have the underworld, ruled by Hades, where the dead went, considered to be a separate realm that could also be entered by the living at times. Heroes like Heracles or Hercules journeyed there and came back. They also had the Olympian realm, placed high up on Mount Olympus, where the gods resided. And they also believed in the world of dreams, and other places like the fields of Elysium, where the righteous souls went after death. These were all considered real places, not just metaphors. For Greeks, they were woven into the fabric of life. It's really incredible. All these different cultures from opposite sides of the globe had very similar ideas about the nature of reality, or realities, should I say. In Norse mythology, the cosmos was divided into 9 realms. These realms were connected by Yggdrasil, the world tree, and each realm had its own unique characteristics, creatures, and gods. There was Asgard, the realm of the gods, Midgard, the human world, which is pretty mid, as the Gen Zers would say, and Vanheim, the world of the Vanir gods, who were these gods of nature, fertility, and the prosperity. And then you had Niflheim, the icy underworld, because every civilization needed their own crummy place down below. There are countless stories of Odin and other gods crossing into different realms, either to interact with other beings or to battle the forces of chaos. The idea that there were multiple worlds in existence was fundamental to the Norse. They believed that these realms were real and that crossing between them was possible, especially for the gods and heroes, and of course if you die. The Norse even had their own doomsday prophecy, Ragnarok, where all the realms would clash and be reborn. Ancient Chinese philosophy was built around the idea of multiple realms and planes of existence. In Taoism, for example, they believed in a balance between the physical world, the spiritual world, and other realms. These were places where deities, immortals, and spirits lived and interacted with humans. One key idea was qi, or life force, which flows between all the realms. Definitely a big inspiration for the Force in Star Wars. Buddhism in China had its own version of parallel worlds with different levels of existence, like Pure Land, where enlightened beings live. The belief was, and still is, that different realms exist in layers. They could influence the living if you know how to connect with them. For the Aboriginal Australians, one of the most ancient civilizations on Earth, Dreamtime is the foundation for how the world was formed and how it still works. It's a whole framework that explains how the land, the animals, and social rules came to be. The ancestors who created everything weren't gods in the usual sense. They were powerful beings who moved through the land, shaping it as they went. Their paths, called song lines, are still followed today through stories, chants, and ceremonies. And these song lines don't just describe a journey, they're believed to hold the journey. By performing the stories in the right place at the right time, people could reconnect with that original power, as if past and present were overlapping. So this Dreamtime isn't described necessarily as back then, it's kinda always there, you just can't always see it. Some groups also describe shifts in awareness or reality during these rituals where the boundaries blur and the world seems to fold. It's not framed in terms of physics, but it does hint at the same ideas, multiple states of existence stacked or side by side, and ways to move between them. The Inca saw reality as divided into three main layers: Hanapacha, the upper world; Kayapacha, K-Pacha, the human world; and Ukupacha, the inner or underworld. Hope I'm pronouncing those correctly. Certain caves, springs, and mountaintops were believed to be access points. A cave could be a doorway into Ukupacha, for example, or a mountaintop might connect to Hananpacha. Each location had a specific role and was tied to one of these realms. They used the Chicana or Andean cross to represent how these worlds connected. It was sort of like a map in a way. Its shape and appears in architecture, textiles, and city layouts. It helped to guide how temples were built, how the solstices were marked, and where important rituals would take place. And you had a living person who was believed to move between these realms, the Inca ruler. Even agricultural rituals were tied to these beliefs. Seeds buried in the ground were thought to pass through Ukupacha before rising again. So you could say these beliefs were deeply ingrained. For the Celts, the other world was a realm where gods, spirits, and the dead existed. It was seen as a place that existed alongside our own. The Celts believed the other world had its own rules, landscapes, its own beings. Certain locations on Earth, like caves and lakes and burial mounds, were believed to be portals where the living could pass into this realm. And special times like Samhain, the early version of Halloween, these were seen as moments where the barrier between the worlds was at its thinnest, allowing easier passage for spirits to enter and exit. The Druids, as spiritual leaders, were thought to be able to journey into the other world through rituals and altered states of consciousness. In some stories, people, including warriors, were said to enter the other world, live out their entire lives there, and return as if no time past. At one time, the Vinca civilization was one of the largest prehistoric cultures in Europe. They were around for about 1500 years, from about 5500 BCE to 4000 BC. They were in parts of what is now Serbia and Romania. The civilization is named after the village of Vinca and the Danube River, where some of the biggest archaeological discoveries were made in the 20th century. The Vinca people had advanced metalworking skills, especially when it came to copper. They excavated the earliest known mine in Europe, and they actually may have been the first civilization in the world to work with copper. These people didn't have a fully developed writing system, but archaeologists have found examples of proto-writing, symbols and marks that don't form a language necessarily, but may have been used as a kind of early form of communication. Their society was also quite organized. Their homes were carefully planned with designated areas for waste disposal. They've also found children's toys during excavations like animal figures and rattles. The Zapotec civilization, ever heard of them? They're usually overshadowed by the more famous Aztecs and Maya, but they were one of the earliest cultures in Mesoamerica. They were pioneers when it came to agriculture and developed one of the first writing systems in the region. Their biggest city was Monte Alban, built around the 5th century BCE. It was around for around 1200 years and at its peak housed around 25,000 people. The ruling class was made up of priests, warriors, and artists overseeing the lower classes, and they subjugated nearby areas, assimilating them into their civilization. What caused their decline? It's not entirely clear. Monte Alban was mostly left intact when the civilization began to fade, so it doesn't seem like there was a catastrophic event that caused the downfall. Could have been economic trouble, which caused people to up and look for work in other places. Eventually, the remaining groups split up into other city-states, which started to compete against each other, which led to the end of their culture altogether. The Hittites. These were an ancient Anatolian civilization that came about around the 2nd millennium BCE in what is now modern-day Turkey. They formed a powerful empire, reaching their peak in the mid-14th century BCE under a king named Suppiluliuma I. At the time, they controlled a large territory that included much of Anatolia and parts of northern Syria. For centuries, the Hittites were only known about through references in other cultures, mainly because their civilization had collapsed by the end of the 12th century BCE. The remnants of their empire was lost to time, and it wasn't until the 19th century that physical evidence of them was rediscovered. In 1834, a French scholar by the name of Charles Texier found what would later be known as the Hittite ruins. At the time, he didn't recognize how significant they were. In the late 1800s, though, archaeological findings at sites like Koltepe revealed trade records mentioning the land of Hatti. Then in 1906, archaeologist Hugo Winkler uncovered over 10,000 clay tablets inscribed in cuneiform, one of the oldest known forms of writing. And these tablets revealed tons of stuff about the Hittite Empire and how it was governed, their culture, and their language. The Nabateans were an Arab civilization that lived in northern Arabia and the southern Levant. Their most famous city, Petra, is in modern-day Jordan and was a major trading hub that connected a number of trade routes across the region. The Nabateans lived between the 4th and 2nd centuries BCE and built a kingdom centered around trade, becoming pretty wealthy and influential. They were very independent, able to fend off several attempts by empires, including the Romans, to control them, but in 106 CE, Emperor Trajan annexed their kingdom into the Roman Empire. The Nabateans still managed to preserve a large part of their culture though, which included finely crafted ceramics and very distinctive architecture, like the rock-cut buildings found in Petra. Their history dates back to at least 312 BCE, when they were first mentioned in battle reports. As they expanded, they gained control over key territories, including Damascus. Petra became quite the city, home to around 20,000 people at its height. Over time, the Nabateans adopted Greek as the dominant language, and by the 5th century, many of them had converted to Christianity. The civilization's decline began with the rise of new Arab groups, and eventually, the Nabatean culture dissipated. The Clovis people. These were an ancient group that lived in North America around 13,000 years ago. They are known for their stone tools, especially their fluted projectile points called Clovis points. The Clovers were some of the earliest known human inhabitants in North America. In 1929, a 19-year-old named Ridgely Whiteman discovered a Clovis site near Blackwater Draw in New Mexico. The site contains stone tools along with the remains of mammoths, which was evidence that there was human activity during the Pleistocene era. Before this, another big discovery happened in 1927 at the Folsom site, where the remains of a now extinct bison species were found alongside human-made tools. This was the first definitive evidence of humans in the Americas during that period. Excavations at Blackwater Draw revealed thousands of artifacts over several years, confirming the existence of a culture that relied heavily on hunting large game like mammoths. The Clovis people were highly mobile hunter-gatherers, but their culture didn't last forever. As the megafauna began to dwindle, so did the way of life for the Clovis people. That, along with the extinction of mammoths, which they may have relied heavily on for food. Çatalhöyük is a Neolithic settlement in Turkey that dates back around 7500 BC. It was rediscovered in the late 50s by James Mallard, who found these layers of buildings. Excavations showed that the settlement consisted of tightly packed mud brick houses, and there were no streets. So how did the people get around? Well, they moved around on the rooftops. Suffice to say, the architecture is fascinating and incredibly unique. Houses were accessed through holes in the ceiling, and there were no clear public buildings. They also found a ton of artifacts, from everyday tools to murals depicting hunting scenes and even human figures. People also buried their dead underneath their homes, and I briefly mentioned this before, but another really cool thing about this society was that there were no grand buildings or signs of a ruling class at all. It seems like social status was relatively equal among everyone. The people at Çatalhöyük were also into agriculture, growing grains like wheat and barley, while also hunting and gathering. The Olmecs were one of the earliest and most influential civilizations in Mesoamerica. They started to form around 1400 to 1200 BCE, but more recent discoveries may push them back even further, to about 16 to 15 BCE, thanks to findings at a site called El Manati. The Olmecs are believed to have evolved from early farming cultures in the Tabasco region dating back as far as 5100 BCE. Their first major center was San Lorenzo. Tenochtitlan, the region's fertile land, and the Coatzacoalcos River helped support a pretty sizable population. leading to the rise of an elite class that demanded fancier goods. And the elites traded for materials like jade and obsidian found in far-off places, which means they had a trade network across Mesoamerica. As time went on, San Lorenzo eventually fell apart around 900 BCE. La Venta then took the spotlight. From 900 BCE until about 400 BCE, La Venta was home to the Great Pyramid, the Mesoamerican version, of course, the largest structure in Mesoamerica at the time, which still stands today. The Olmec civilization is most famous for their massive stone heads, believed to be portraits of their rulers. Each head is unique and is adorned with distinctive headdresses. The Khmer Empire was a powerful civilization in Southeast Asia that lasted from 802 CE to 1431, thereabouts. It stretched across present-day Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, and parts of Vietnam. This empire was this blend of Buddhist and Hindu cultures, which came about after centuries of conflict. The Khmer are also best known for their incredible architecture, particularly the temples of Angkor, which are still some of the most impressive monuments in the world. And a lot of these structures are, thankfully, still in remarkably good condition to this day. But like a lot of great civilizations, the Khmer Empire eventually began to decline. As for why? Well, one possibility is that the migration of Thai people slowly encroached on Khmer territory, similar to how Germanic tribes moved into the Roman Empire. This gradual takeover may have weakened the Khmer's political influence over time. Others think that constant warfare is what did them in. Another theory is that there could have been changes in the climate that messed with their agriculture. If rainfall patterns changed, the Khmer might have struggled to maintain their farms, and mass amounts of people would have had to leave. The Nabta Playa people lived in southern Egypt around 6,000 to 11,000 years ago. They were primarily nomadic, moving around in search of food and water. Eventually, some members began to settle in the area, forming a more permanent civilization. As the climate started drying out, the region transformed into a desert, which would have sucked for them, but it did help preserve a lot of the artifacts that they left behind. One of the most famous things they left behind is the stone circle of Nabta Playa, which is the oldest known astronomical site on Earth. But along with marking the seasons, archaeologists have discovered animal remains in underground chambers, meaning that rituals may have taken place here as well. Like the other ancient civilizations on this list, the Nabta Playa people eventually disappeared. Climate change played a major role in their decline, pushing them to migrate and adapt elsewhere. And finally, the Minoan civilization lived on the Greek island of Crete from around 3000 to 1000 BC. They were a distinct culture recognized as the early ancestors of later ancient Greek society. The Minoans had pretty interesting religious lives, which included animal sacrifices, big festivals, and a number of cults celebrating nature and fertility. Egyptian hieroglyphs reference the Minoans, and from this we can determine they were active traders. They were also skilled in arts, coming up with beautiful pottery and intricate frescoes, but their civilization fell away, and one theory is that it was thanks to a volcanic eruption in the nearby Santorini Islands, which could have unleashed all these devastating tsunamis and ash clouds. Another theory comes from the Greek historian Herodotus, who thought that plagues and diseases might have been the cause. But like most of the ancient civilizations on this list, we don't know exactly how they disappeared.
Crucifixion was thought to leave no trace until archaeologists dug into a burial cave near Jerusalem. In 1968, a limestone tomb revealed the only known physical evidence of Roman crucifixion, a heel bone pierced by a large iron nail. The man had been crucified in the 1st century AD. The nail was bent, possibly hitting a knot in the wood, making removal impossible. This meant his body was buried with it still embedded in his bone. The discovery confirmed that crucifixion was even more gruesome than once thought and left a very chilling mark on history. Deep inside of a cave in Mexico, archaeologists discovered what looked like the aftermath of an ancient massacre. Known as the Blood Cave, this sacred Maya site was littered with human remains, bones scattered around ceremonial altars, smeared with traces of iron-rich pigment that resembled blood. Experts believe this was a hidden ritual site where sacrifices were made to appease Chak, the Maya rain god. The remains suggested entire families were slaughtered in desperate desperate times, possibly during droughts. The eerie stillness of the cave combined with the gruesome scene left archaeologists deeply unsettled. It looked like they died in an instant. People frozen mid-run, their skeletons sprawled across the ancient city. Mohenjo-Daro, one of the most advanced cities of the Indus Valley civilization, holds one of archaeology's most disturbing puzzles. Dozens of skeletons were found lying face down in the streets as if something catastrophic struck without warning. The bodies showed no signs of trauma, but unusually high levels of radiation were detected in the area. This sparked wild theories, including an ancient nuclear blast. While mainstream science points to more natural causes, no consensus has been reached. Whatever happened, it was fast and final. They weren't buried, they were posed, in rows with cups in their hands like a twisted final party. In the Royal Cemetery of archaeologists found burial pits dating back to 2500 BC filled with the remains of soldiers, musicians, and attendants. Many were positioned in perfect formation, wearing elaborate jewelry, holding instruments or drinking vessels. For decades it was believed these people voluntarily drank poison to accompany their king or queen into the afterlife, but modern analysis suggests a darker truth. They may have been drugged and then killed. The idea of mass voluntary death now looks more like a carefully staged ritual execution. They were found face down in peat bogs, skin still intact, hair preserved, hands bound, and nobody knew who they were. Known as bog bodies, these incredibly preserved corpses from the Iron Age were discovered across northern Europe from Denmark to Ireland. One of the most disturbing is the Tulland man, who looked almost peaceful until you see the noose around his neck. Many of the bodies had their lives brutally taken, then dumped in the acidic bogs. These were not accidental deaths. Experts believe they were sacrifices to the gods or executions for crimes lost to time. It's like stumbling into a 2,000-year-old murder mystery. Their mouths were frozen in terror, eyes open, arms contorted in agony. These weren't peaceful deaths. The mummies of Guanajuato, found in a crypt beneath the Mexican city, are believed to have died during a 19th century cholera outbreak, but some experts theorize many were buried alive. Due to poor medical knowledge at the time, people presumed dead may have simply been unconscious. When their bodies were later exhumed, still in twisted positions of panic, it led to the belief that they woke up 6 feet under. These accidental mummies are a grim reminder of how terrifying death could be, even in relatively recent times. That would be an absolute nightmare. That's so scary, being buried alive. Ooh. That movie, Buried? Ooh. Nightmare. So nightmare. Oh my god. In an ancient Egyptian palace courtyard, archaeologists unearthed a pile of hands. Human hands. Severed, buried, arranged. Discovered at the site of Avaris, a former capital in Egypt, the 3,600-year-old find revealed at least 16 right hands buried in pits. All belonged to adult males, likely captives or enemies. Ancient records suggest warriors would present severed hands to Egyptian rulers in exchange for gold. This disturbing form of trophy taking was both symbolic and transactional, stripping enemies of their power while enriching the victors. The fact that these hands were neatly buried in the palace courtyard adds a level of calculated cruelty to the practice. They were all strong, male, and buried with their heads between their legs. Archaeologists in York uncovered over 80 skeletons, most without their heads, in what is believed to be a Roman-era cemetery for gladiators or condemned prisoners. Many showed signs of healed battle wounds and severe trauma. Some skulls bore bite marks, possibly from animals in the arena. The decapitation appears ritualized, with skulls placed between the knees or at the feet, suggesting that this was more than an execution. It was a performance of power, dominance, and final humiliation. When they broke into a sealed tunnel beneath the Pyramid of the Moon, archaeologists weren't prepared for what they found. Inside, they discovered ritual chambers filled with animal remains, obsidian blades, and the bound corpses of decapitated humans. Teotihuacan, one of the greatest cities of ancient Mesoamerica, held dark secrets beneath its towering pyramids. The sacrifices here were often meant to consecrate sacred spaces or connect with the underworld. In one burial, researchers found 4 individuals with their hands tied and skulls crushed, deliberately arranged alongside offerings like jaguar skeletons. The sheer scale of violence stunned even those who had studied human sacrifices for decades. Bones cracked, flesh stripped clean, burn marks in the fire pit. This wasn't just a meal, this was human consumption. Archaeologists examining ancient ancestral Puebloan sites uncovered signs of people eating dating back over 900 years. At sites like Cowboy Wash in Colorado, human bones showed cut marks, broken skulls, and evidence of being boiled or roasted. Some skulls were even turned into bowls. While it's debated whether this was a survival tactic during famine or a form of ritualized terror, the findings were so disturbing that even scientists had to stop and question the moral lines of past societies. One researcher called it ritualized psychosis. As terrifying as these discoveries are, they tell us something crucial. Our ancestors weren't just builders of temples and pyramids, they were also witnesses to and participants in unimaginable acts. The past is far darker than we were ever taught in school, and it's still being unearthed.
The Nabateans were an ancient civilization that lived in the deserts of what is now Jordan, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Israel. They're probably most well known for creating the stunning city of Petra, which really has to be one of the coolest places on Earth. They were, as you can probably tell, really good at architecture. Petra, often called the Rose City, is carved into the sides of sandstone cliffs, and it's one of the most famous archaeological sites in the world, for very good reason. They weren't just about building them, they were also incredible at surviving in harsh desert conditions. They developed advanced water management systems like dams, cisterns, and channels to capture and store rainwater in the dry desert. This allowed them to live in a place that most other civilizations would have struggled to survive in. They were also skilled traders, controlling trade routes that connected Arabia, Egypt, and the Mediterranean. They traded spices, incense, and other goods, which made them incredibly wealthy. Their success was partly due to their ability to adapt to the desert environment and make use of its resources in smart ways. They didn't leave behind written records, but they did leave behind structures and tons of artwork that has helped us piece together what their culture was probably like. The ancestral Puebloans, also known as the Anasazi, were a Native American civilization that lived in the southwestern United States, mainly in what's now Colorado, Utah, Arizona, and New Mexico. They're known for having built cliff dwellings and pueblos in the desert, especially in places like Mesa Verde and Chaco Canyon. Their homes were often carved right into the sides of cliffs, giving them protection from the harsh desert environment. They were also skilled architects and farmers. They lived in a dry desert, but they developed impressive irrigation systems to grow crops like corn, beans, and squash, and they also built large multi-story buildings, creating entire communities that could house hundreds of people. Their most famous site, Chaco Canyon, was a major center for culture and trade. It had grand ceremonial structures, large plazas, and roads leading in all different directions, almost like an ancient highway system of the desert. The Puebloans were also known for their intricate pottery, woven textiles, and beautiful rock art. Their culture was deeply connected to the land, with religious ceremonies tied to the cycles of nature, but by the late 1200s, they just mysteriously abandoned their cliff dwellings, and there's still some debate as to why. The Sumerians were one of the earliest known civilizations, and they lived in the deserts of Mesopotamia and what's now southern Iraq. They came about around 3500 BCE and are often credited with creating the first cities. The land they lived on was mostly dry and flat, but the Tigris and Euphrates rivers gave them the water they needed to survive. The Sumerians were also famous for developing one of the first writing systems, cuneiform. They used wedge-shaped marks on clay tablets to create everything from business transactions to religious stories, and this allowed them to keep records and pass on knowledge across generations. The Sumerians were also skilled builders, engineers, and farmers. They created irrigation systems to water their crops, which helped them turn the desert into fertile land. And they also built impressive structures like ziggurats, which are these huge stepped pyramids that were used for religious ceremonies.
Their cities like Ur and Uruk were bustling with activity with markets, temples, and palaces. The Sumerians also made huge advances in math, science, and law, but then they disappeared, and their cities were buried under layers of sand until being rediscovered in the 19th century. The Hohokam were an ancient civilization that lived in the deserts of the American Southwest, mainly in what is now Arizona, from around 300 to 1500 CE. Now, the Hohokam, that's not what they were actually called, but that's what archaeologists have named them. They're best known for their canal systems. They took advantage of the little water they had, creating hundreds of miles of irrigation canals that helped them grow crops like corn, beans, and squash in the desert. Canals were so advanced that some of them are still visible to this day, and they used the flow of water from rivers like the Salt River to channel water to their fields, and this allowed them to support large communities, even in a desert where water is obviously scarce. They lived in these large planned settlements with houses made of adobe and wood. They built platform mounds for religious ceremonies, and they were skilled in pottery, creating intricate designs that have been rediscovered by archaeologists. But like so many other civilizations on this list, the Hohokam mysteriously disappeared around 1500 CE. The Minoans are one of the coolest lost civilizations, said by some to be the first civilization in Europe. They lived on the island of Crete in the Mediterranean around 2000 BCE. Their story is pretty fascinating because, again, they mysteriously vanished and their civilization wasn't rediscovered until the 20th century. They were advanced with their own writing system, artwork, and all these impressive palaces. The biggest one, Palace of Knossos, or what's left of it, looks like something out of a myth. I can only imagine how incredible it must have looked when it was all still there. The Minoans were traders, sailing all over the Mediterranean, which helped them spread their culture and influence, and around 1450 BCE, the Minoans faded away. Some believe a massive volcanic eruption on the nearby island of Thera caused it. Could have also been invasions, but it wasn't until the early 1900s that archaeologists started uncovering the remains of their cities and palaces, piecing together their society. The Indus Valley Civilization, also known as the Harappan Civilization, is one of the most impressive ancient cultures rediscovered in the desert. This civilization lived over 4,000 years ago in what's now Pakistan and northwest India, in the desert regions near the Indus River. They were incredibly advanced, with well-planned cities, drainage systems, and standardized brick sizes. They were very organized. Their two main cities, Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, were massive, with streets laid out in neat grids. They also had sophisticated water management systems with public baths and wells, but even though we have all this evidence left behind from them, we still don't know how to read their writing system, which means we can only guess about their language and the reason for their sudden collapse around 1900 BCE. In the early 20th century, archaeologists discovered the ruins of Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro buried beneath layers of earth, and today we know they were an incredibly advanced society, but there's still a lot of mystery about their culture. Next up, we have the Napta Stones, which are a series of old structures in the Nubian desert. They're around 6,000 to 7,000 years old. They were discovered by a team of archaeologists led by Fred Wendorf in the 70s. The stones are flat rocks and big stones set up in a circular formation. Some are hefty, weighing tons. Now, what these stones were actually for is still a bit of a mystery. Some think they might have been an early form of a calendar, though, and they also line up with astronomical events, which tells us that the ancient builders knew their astronomy, doing some incredibly precise measuring for the time. But we're still not sure about who set these things up. Jado is an abandoned ghost town in Niger, deep in the Sahara Desert. Found on the Jado Plateau, the ancient settlement's true name is still a mystery because no formal excavation has ever been carried out. The ruins sit on top of cliffs, and below them, hidden ponds that almost dry up in certain seasons, perfect breeding ground for mosquitoes. Jado was most likely founded by the Sao people, who were known for setting up other settlements around Lake Chad. It seems like at one time there was a bustling city here, and some think it could have been part of the Kanem-Bornu Empire from as early as the 13th century. By the 19th century, though, repeated raids by the Tuareg and the spread of malaria from cattle herding pushed people out. By the mid-20th century, only a handful of people remained, relying on date farming and salt harvesting. In 1930, during French colonial rule, a military outpost was set up nearby. Jado stayed relatively quiet until 2014 when gold was discovered in the area, so then there was a rush, attracting thousands of miners from across North Africa, but mining operations were shut down in 2017. The Norte Chico civilization is one of the most mysterious ancient societies in the Americas, located in what is now Peru. Dating back to around 3000 BCE, it might be the oldest known civilization in the Americas. The ruins have revealed some amazing finds, mainly huge pyramids and intricate irrigation systems. There's still a lot we don't know about how people actually lived though. So far, 6 pyramids have been discovered, with the biggest one being Pyramide Mayor. Now, these structures aren't as flashy as later Inca pyramids, but they're still impressive and interesting because we just know so little about the people who built them. The Norte Chico people didn't make pottery either, which is kind of unusual for ancient civilizations. Instead, they're thought to have used gourds, which of course don't last for thousands and thousands of years. There's not much art or decoration either, but it's believed they had some kind of belief in a higher power, though what exactly they worshipped is still unknown. The civilization seemed to be centered around 3 main rivers, and by 1800 BCE, the settlements were mysteriously abandoned. Well, if we're talking about incredible ancient civilizations in deserts, we can't not talk about the ancient Egyptians, right? They lived along the Nile River, but the surrounding desert played a huge role in shaping their culture. This civilization started around 3100 BCE and is known for their incredible and mysterious monuments like the pyramids and the Sphinx. The Egyptians were absolutely brilliant when it came to architecture, engineering, astronomy. They were so advanced that we're still trying to figure out how they did it all. They built massive stone structures, and their understanding of the stars helped them create a pretty accurate calendar. And the Egyptians also had just a rich culture with art, writing, religion, mummies. They created hieroglyphics, one of the earliest forms of writing, to record everything from royal orders to daily life. Their gods and goddesses like Ra, the sun god, were a huge part of their rituals and beliefs. For centuries, the desert kept their secrets hidden, but over time, archaeologists started digging up tombs, walking into these incredible temples, and finding all sorts of artifacts that we're still amazed by to this day. And even with all we've learned about the ancient Egyptians, there are still plenty of mysteries, still unexplored areas of the pyramids, and still questions and conspiracies about their technology.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Valeriana, Mexico. We are starting off with the most recent discovery, which was just announced this week. Deep within the dense jungles of Mexico's Campeche state, a massive Maya city, lost for centuries beneath the canopy, has been accidentally rediscovered, turning our understanding of ancient civilizations on its head. PhD student Luke Ald Thomas stumbled upon this hidden metropolis, now named Valeriana, while sifting through online LiDAR data intended for environmental monitoring. Using this laser mapping technology, which reveals structures buried under thick vegetation, he uncovered pyramids, sports fields, causeways connecting districts, and amphitheaters sprawled across an area the size of Edinburgh. Dating back to 750 to 850 AD, Valeriana may have been home to 30,000 to 50,000 people, more than the region's population today. Astonishingly, this lost city lies just a 15-minute hike from a major road near Ishpuil, yet it remained hidden because the jungle had entirely reclaimed it. The discovery challenges the old notion that the tropics were inhospitable to advanced civilizations, unveiling instead a rich and complex Maya culture that thrived here, with thousands of buildings including plazas with temple pyramids and evidence of sophisticated urban planning. Valeriana offers a captivating glimpse into a world that was never meant to be found. In our number 9 spot today, we have El Mirador in Guatemala. Hidden deep within the jungles of northern Guatemala is El Mirador, an ancient Maya city that remained lost for nearly 2,000 years. Once a thriving metropolis and the capital of the Maya civilization, it housed around 200,000 people and featured monumental structures like the Ladanta Pyramid, one of the largest pyramids in the world by volume. Archaeologists like Richard Hansen have have been unearthing its secrets, revealing a sophisticated society that existed centuries earlier than previously thought. The city boasts massive pyramids, intricate friezes depicting mythological hero twins, and an extensive network of causeways connecting it to other Maya sites. Isn't it astounding that such an advanced civilization could vanish into the jungle only to reshape our understanding of history when it was rediscovered? In our number 8 spot today, we have Angamuco in Mexico. Nestled in the dense forests of Michoacan, Angamuco was an ancient city built by the Purépecha civilization, which were fierce rivals of the Aztecs. Founded around 900 CE, this sprawling metropolis is thought to have been home to up to 100,000 people at its peak, making it comparable in size to modern-day cities. The city remained concealed under thick vegetation until 2007, when archaeologists stumbled upon it. But it wasn't until 2011 that the true scale of Angamuco was revealed thanks to LiDAR technology. By shooting lasers from airplanes to penetrate the jungle canopy, researchers mapped out an area covering about 26 square kilometers or 10 square miles, uncovering thousands of structures that had been hidden for over a millennium. Angamuco is astonishing for its sheer size and complexity. The city features an intricate network of pyramids, plazas, roadways, and residential areas. What's particularly fascinating is its urban planning. Unlike other Mesoamerican cities that were built around a central core, Angamuco's structures are spread out evenly, almost like a grid. This challenges previous notions about urban development in ancient civilization. Isn't it kind of mind-blowing that such a massive city, bustling with life centuries ago, could just vanish into the jungle and escape our notice until recently? It definitely makes you wonder what other secrets are still hidden beneath the trees, waiting to reshape our understanding of history. In our number 7 spot today, we have Kokare in Cambodia. Hidden deep within the remote jungles of northern Cambodia lies Kokare, a long-forgotten city that once served as the capital of the Khmer Empire from 928 to 944 CE. For centuries, this remarkable place was swallowed by dense forests, its temples and monuments concealed by overgrown vegetation. It wasn't until French explorers ventured into the area in the late 19th century that Kokare resurfaced from obscurity. The site is famous for its unique 7-tiered pyramid, which stands out with its striking and unconventional architecture, unlike anything else in the region. Scattered throughout the area are numerous temples adorned with intricate stone sculptures, offering a glimpse into a brief but significant period when the Khmer capital shifted away from Angkor. While many of these artifacts were once targets of looting, they are now protected, allowing us to appreciate the distinct artistic styles and cultural innovations of that era. In our number 6 spot today, we have Calakmul, Mexico. Hidden deep within the dense jungles of Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula lies Calakmul, an ancient Maya city that was once a dominant force in the Maya world. After its decline around the 10th century CE, this place was swallowed by the forest, its massive pyramids and palaces forgotten for nearly a millennium. It wasn't until 1931 that biologist Cyrus L. Lundell, while conducting an aerial survey, spotted the towering structures peeking through the canopy and brought this lost city back into the world's attention. Archaeologists have since uncovered over 6,000 structures, including some of the tallest pyramids ever built by the Maya. Calakmul was a fierce rival to Tikal in present-day Guatemala, and the discoveries here have shed incredible light on ancient Maya politics, warfare, and the complex dynamics between competing city-states. In our number 5 spot today, we have Ciudad Perdida. Hidden deep within Colombia's Sierra Nevada mountains lies Ciudad Perdida, the Lost City, an awe-inspiring ancient metropolis built by the Tairona people around 800 CE, centuries before Machu Picchu. Swallowed by dense rainforest and forgotten for over a millennia, it remained hidden until treasure hunters stumbled upon its moss-covered stone steps in 1972. The site boasts a complex network of tiled roads, terraces, and circular plazas carved into the mountainside, showcasing the Tairona's remarkable urban planning and engineering skills. Exploring Ciudad Perdida not only unveils the secrets of a civilization that thrived in harmony with nature, but also leaves us wondering how many more lost worlds are waiting to be discovered beneath the jungle canopy. In our number 4 spot today, we have the lost city of the monkey god in Honduras. Hidden deep within a rainforest in Honduras lies the legendary lost city of the monkey god, also known as La Ciudad Blanca, or the White City. For centuries, explorers and locals spoke of this mysterious place, shrouded in myth and said to be filled with immense treasures and guarded by ancient deities. In 2015, a team of researchers made a groundbreaking discovery using LiDAR technology, which allowed them to see through the dense jungle canopy from the air. What they found were structures hinting at a complex pre-Columbian society that had been lost to time. As archaeologists ventured into the untouched terrain, they uncovered plazas, elaborate earthworks, and a stunning cache of stone sculptures depicting animals and possibly deities, all evidence of a civilization that thrived between 1000 and 1400 CE. The discovery not only confirmed age-old legends, but also provided invaluable insights into a forgotten chapter of human history. In our number 3 spot today, we have Cuelap in Peru. Hidden high in the cloud forests of northern Peru lies Cuelap, an ancient fortress built by the enigmatic Chachapoya culture around the 6th century CE. Overgrown and concealed by dense vegetation for centuries, it wasn't until the 19th century that explorers rediscovered this monumental site. Cuelap boasts massive stone walls soaring up to 60 feet high and encompasses hundreds of circular stone buildings perched atop a mountain ridge. These architectural marvels offer a tantalizing glimpse into the lives of the warriors of the clouds, as the Chachapoya are known. The sheer scale and sophistication of Cuelap rival that of more famous sites, yet it remains one of history's best kept secrets. In our number 2 spot today, we have the secret Amazon city. Hidden for millennia beneath the dense canopy of the Amazon rainforest, an enormous ancient city has been unearthed in the Upano region of eastern Ecuador, radically altering our understanding of Amazonian history. Previously, it was believed that the Amazon was home only to nomadic tribes or small settlements. But this city, built around 2,500 years ago and inhabited for up to a millennia, tells a very different story. Archaeologists discovered an astonishing network of roads and canals connecting over 6,000 rectangular platforms, each about 20 meters by 10 meters and up to 3 meters high, arranged in groups around central plazas. Some structures, like the massive 140 by 40 meter platform at Quilamope, suggests ceremonial purposes. This sophisticated road system includes straight paths that extend up to 25 kilometers, featuring impressive right angles and engineering that managed the abundant water through canals. Nestled in the shadow of a volcano that enriched the soil, but may have also led to the society's demise, this metropolis challenges Eurocentric views of civilization by revealing a complex, interconnected urban society thriving in the Amazon. Who would have imagined that beneath the jungle's lush greenery lay a city possibly rivaling the size and complexity of ancient highland civilizations like Machu Picchu? And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Mahendraparvata. Hidden deep within Cambodia's dense jungles lies an ancient city from the Khmer Empire that remained concealed for centuries. Although explorers had inklings of its existence, it wasn't until 2012 that the true extent of this lost city was revealed, thanks to archaeologists Jean-Baptiste Chavance and Damien Evans using cutting-edge LiDAR technology. This airborne laser scanning peeled back the jungle mythological canopy to unveil an elaborate grid of temples, roads, and ponds, all dating back to 802 AD, making it about 350 years older than Angkor Wat. Founded by Jayavarman II, the city's name means Mountain of the Great Indra, referencing the sacred mountain where he was crowned the first king of the Khmer Empire. Even the French archaeologist Philippe Stern, who explored the area in 1936, only scratched the surface of its secrets.
Well, exciting news everyone, a story about the discovery of a long-lost city in the Amazon just came out this year. Scientists have uncovered a massive, ancient city hidden deep in the Amazon rainforest in the Apano area of eastern Ecuador. This place was buried under thick vegetation for thousands of years. For ages, we thought the Amazon was home to small nomadic groups or tiny villages, but this city proves that sophisticated urban societies once existed there. Professor Stephen Rothstein, who led the research, said, "This is older than any other site we know in the Amazon. We have a Eurocentric view of civilization, but this shows we have to change our idea about what is culture and civilization." The researchers used this super cool LiDAR technology, which is basically a high-tech method of scanning the ground from above, and discovered around 6,000 rectangular platforms and a network of roads and canals. One of the platforms measures 459 by 131 feet. What's also wild is that this society seemed to have been even bigger than the famous Maya civilizations in Central America. Jose Ariarte, an archaeology professor, stated, "Imagine that you discovered another civilization like the Maya, but with completely different architecture, land use, and ceramics." I mean, how cool is that? This discovery challenges everything we thought we knew about the Amazon. Professor Rothstein had apparently been warned against doing the research because many believed that no ancient groups like this lived in the Amazon, but in his own words, he was just stubborn enough to go ahead and do it anyway. They're planning to explore an adjoining area just as big, so who knows what else will be revealed in the very near future. Angkor Wat is an ancient Hindu-Buddhist temple complex found in Cambodia. Guinness World Records lists it as the largest religious structure in the entire world, so it's quite the sight. It was mostly neglected after the 16th century and wasn't known to the Western world until about 1860, when a French explorer named Henri Mahot popularized it in Europe with his travel notes, writing, "One of these temples, a rival to that of Solomon, and erected by some ancient Michelangelo, might take an honorable place beside our most beautiful buildings. It is grander than anything left to us by Greece or Rome." High praise, but then he went on to describe the locals as savages, so that kind of ruins it. Angkor Wat is pretty spectacular, but it's all that's left of what used to be a much larger city. Some say it was even bigger than modern-day New York. Now, in terms of the size of the area it covered, I'm not talking about population. At its peak, Angkor was likely home to hundreds of thousands of people, though, making it one of the largest urban centers in the world at the time. The city had an advanced irrigation system with canals and reservoirs, but over time the soil started to deplete, affecting crops and food production. Some researchers also believe droughts could have hit the region, and by the 15th century the city itself had mostly been left behind, but the temple complex of Angkor Wat was never completely abandoned. Derinkuyu is quite literally buried. It's an ancient underground city in Turkey that likely started being built around the 8th to 7th century BCE, but it wasn't fully formed until about 780 to 1180 CE, when it was used as a refuge during the Arab-Byzantine Wars, giving people shelter and protection against invasions. It's about 280 feet deep and can shelter around 20,000 people, along with their livestock and food supplies. It's an insanely cool multiple level complex with large stone doors used to close off each floor separately, offering protection from the threats from above. It was built with wine and oil presses, stables, storage rooms, and even chapels. One room was believed to have been used as a religious school, with nearby spaces acting as studies. One of the coolest features is the deep ventilation shaft, which also worked as a well, so that the people living underground could have access to water. Derinkuyu continued being used over the centuries during various invasions, but eventually it was forgotten and lay hidden for years until a homeowner discovered it entirely by accident while renovating in 1963. They'd chased a chicken that ran into a hole in their basement only to find an entire network of underground tunnels. By 1969, parts of it were opened to the public, and today you can explore about half of this subterranean city. The Italian hilltop town of Orvieto has an entire network of underground tunnels that were kept secret for centuries. The underground city dates back to the ancient Etruscans. These early inhabitants started carving out tunnels in the volcanic rock to create wells and cisterns, and over time it evolved into a massive subterranean maze with over 1,200 interconnected tunnels and grottos. Some of the chambers contain remnants of Etruscan sanctuaries where ancient rituals took place, but these tunnels were used up until World War II and in every era in between. It was used for storage and refuge during tough times in the Roman era, the Middle Ages, and again, most recently, World War II, where parts of the underground network were used as bomb shelters. Again, the tunnels were kept secret for a long time, only made known to outsiders in recent years. Next up, we have the Özkonak underground city, again in Turkey. It's a network of tunnels carved into volcanic granite, connecting larger areas, and even has a pipe communication system that links all the different levels. It was rediscovered in 1972 by a farmer named Latif Akar, who was curious as to where all his excess water was going. He decided to investigate himself and ended up coming across this underground room. And then it was excavated, and it turned out to be a giant city that could house up to 60,000 people. Today, 4 floors of it are open to the public, but there are a total of 10 floors, reaching a depth of about 131 feet. Özkonak was built with some pretty interesting defensive capabilities too. Holes were built above the tunnels so that defenders could dump hot sand on intruders. Seems like nobody does underground cities better than Turkey, because we have another one on the list. Kaymakli. This site was first opened to tourists in 1964, and it's believed to have been built in the 8th to 7th centuries BCE, carved out of soft volcanic rock. As time went on, especially during the Byzantine era, the city expanded significantly to protect its inhabitants from raids. Kaymakli is actually connected to Derinkuyu through a network of tunnels spanning over 5.5 miles. And today, some of these tunnels are still used for storage, stables, and cellars. The tunnels are a bit different from the ones in Derinkuyu. They're lower, narrower, and more steeply inclined. The 4 floors open to visitors are designed around ventilation shafts, which were of course very important for survival underground. On the first floor, you'll find a stable and a stone door leading to a church. Lower down, you'll find a church, storage areas, kitchens, and block formations that were used for cold copper processing. Let's talk about Thonis, an ancient city that's now submerged beneath the Mediterranean Sea. This Egyptian port city was located near the mouth of the Nile River and was once a hub for trade, especially with Greece and other Mediterranean regions. Thonis was very important in ancient Egypt's economy and was filled with these grand temples and statues dedicated to gods and goddesses, but then it sank beneath the sea, and for centuries it was lost and forgotten until it was rediscovered by underwater archaeologists in 2000. And along with the remnants of the city itself, divers found these remarkably well-preserved artifacts like statues and pottery. Aktun Tonikil Mcnal, or ATM for short, is an incredible cave in Belize full of ancient Maya history. Ceramics, fascinating stoneware, and a famous skeleton have all been found here, and more. The famous skeleton in question is known as the Crystal Maiden, believed to be that of a 17-year-oold boy. His bones have calcified over time, giving them a sparkling, crystallized look. Hence the name. A lot of the ceramics found here have what are called kill holes, which were made to release spirits, meaning this cave was probably used for ceremonial practices. The cave is just stunning, the type of thing you'd see in an Indiana Jones movie. You'll also have a variety of wildlife here. Bats, crabs, tropical fish, otters can go here, but not on your own. Tourism is carefully managed, so you can explore it with a tour guide. Makes sense, they want to make sure the place is preserved. Plus, it can be pretty dangerous. The main cave system stretches about 3 miles long, with sections that can get pretty tight. And during heavy rain, the river level rises, in which case it's completely closed off to tourists. Now we head over to Poland to check out Wieliczka salt mine. This mine has been in use in some form since the Neolithic times, with salt production starting as early as 1044. Excavation officially began in the 13th century, and the mine kept producing table salt until 1996, making it one of the oldest salt mines in the world. The maze of tunnels stretches over 178 miles and reaches depths of about 1,073 feet deep. You can visit the place today, and it's not just a mine. There's some incredible stuff to see. There's an underground lake and chapel, and tons of beautiful sculptures, all carved out of salt. Based on the images I've seen online, the place looks like something you'd see in a sword and sorcery movie. It's amazing. During World War II, the mine was repurposed by the Germans for war-related manufacturing, with forced laborers brought in to work underground. Naurs is a charming little village in northern France, home to about 1,200 people, but just a short walk away, there's an ancient underground city that once housed around 3 times that number of people. The caves were hand-carved during the Middle Ages and stretch about 2 miles with over 300 rooms. The underground was built for villagers seeking shelter from invasions. It was made so that people could stay down there for long stretches of time. They built areas for livestock and water wells, and there were areas for people to gather and hang out. And here's a really cool thing about this underground city: there were bakeries. To keep the smoke from the ovens hidden, too, the chimneys were rooted through the houses above. So while the villagers baked bread down below, the invaders above would think people were still in their homes, and then would be very confused when they broke inside and saw that there was nobody there. The caves remained a secret until 1887, when they were rediscovered, and soldiers during both world wars took refuge here. In fact, you can still see graffiti and carvings left behind by Australian and British troops. The Abydos carvings have been a hot topic of debate and discussion for over a century. Rediscovered in the 1840s, they're one of the earliest cited examples of ancient Egyptians possibly having had advanced technology. They were found in the Temple of Seti I, and what makes them so fascinating is that they seem to depict modern-looking objects like helicopters, submarines, and airplanes. So, did the ancient Egyptians have knowledge far beyond what we typically give them credit for? They do look eerily like machinery that wouldn't be invented for thousands of years to come. So, did the Egyptians create this stuff themselves? Did they have contact with advanced civilizations or extraterrestrials who shared their technology with them? Or are these just abstract images that we've decided look like modern pieces of technology, even though they were never intended to be?
The Great Pyramid of Giza is a massive four-sided pyramid created by the ancient Egyptians, correct? Well, no, it's actually not, because in fact, the Great Pyramid of Giza has 8 distinct sides. Take a look. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the only 8-sided Egyptian pyramid, and it is also incredibly precisely made, with each indentation being 1 degree of a half degree. This is precision that would be incredibly hard to achieve even with today's modern technology. While some people accredit the wind to these indentations, they're incredibly precise, like I said, splitting each of the previously assumed 4 sides directly in half at the exact same degree of indentation. Do you really think the wind just happened to blow perfectly and the same on all 4 angles of the pyramid? Yeah, I don't think so. Well, now that we're all caught up with how many sides the Great Pyramid actually has, let's talk about why. The leading theory is that the indents were made so that the casting stones, the ones that gave the Great Pyramid its impeccable shine back in the day before they disappeared due to years of erosion, would have stayed in place. Other theories include something to do with precise angles, either designed by or designed to attract aliens, but we will get into that later.
Here's an incredible piece of technology ancient Egyptians have been pretty much confirmed to have access to: electroplating. Electroplating involves coating a metal object with a thin layer of another metal using electricity. Sounds like a pretty modern invention, but there is some evidence that ancient Egyptians might have known about it as well. Several artifacts from ancient Egypt, especially jewelry and decorative items,
definitely look like they were electroplated. They have a very thin layer of gold or other shiny metal on their surface, much thinner and more uniform than what could be achieved by the types of techniques we'd picture being used at the time, or even thousands of years later. So some researchers think that the Egyptians had discovered a form of electroplating. If this is true, it would mean that the Egyptians had a much more advanced understanding of chemistry and electricity than we thought. One piece of evidence is the discovery of ancient batteries, like the famous Baghdad battery. Now, this wasn't found in Egypt, but it is a sign that early civilizations might have had the knowledge to create basic electrical equipment, and it's possible that similar technology could have been used by the Egyptians as well.
Another amazing feature of the Great Pyramid is its near perfect alignment with the North Pole. Yeah, the north-south axis is aligned within 0.05 degrees of true north-south, which is insane, especially when you consider the fact that the North Star, which is located in the direction of true north, didn't become visible in the night sky until 500 AD. That's 3,100 years after the Great Pyramid is believed to have been built. What's even crazier is that the north-south alignment of the Great Pyramid constructed in 2600 BC is more accurate than the alignment of the modern-day Meridian building at the Greenwich Observatory in London, which deviates 0.15 degrees from true north, which is 3 times more than the deviation of the Great Pyramid. While we have no way of actually knowing how exactly the ancient Egyptians could have done this, perhaps luck, it is assumed by the majority of scientists, archaeologists, and historians that they would have had to use incredibly advanced algorithms and equations that would have only been applicable during seasonal solstice times when the sun's alignment was more easily distinguishable. Even still, with all that and modern day technology, we still couldn't do what they did, which leads many people to believe that possibly, just maybe, they had help from above, from either aliens or the gods. It's dealer's choice, really.
When it comes to the mysteries of ancient Egypt, there are usually talks of advanced technology or possible interaction with aliens, as just mentioned, but what if they possessed knowledge that was carried over from another, possibly even more advanced civilization? There's a really cool idea that there may have been a civilization or group of people who lived in ancient Egypt before the known ancient Egyptian culture came about. The idea is that these predecessors possessed advanced knowledge and technology beyond what we currently attribute to ancient Egyptians, advanced architecture and scientific knowledge, who knows what else. When you look at the anomalies in ancient Egyptian constructions, like the precision of the pyramids, alignment with celestial bodies, as Hannah mentioned, the complexity of their engineering, it could be possible that these feats were made possible because of knowledge that had been carried over by a civilization now lost to time. Or the ancient Egyptians were just really smart.
Let's talk shaft alignment. There is a distinct difference between the Great Pyramid of Giza and the other two, and that is the fact that the Great Pyramid is the only one built with air shafts leading to the north and south walls of the pyramid. While this is already pretty interesting, it becomes far more interesting when you realize that the shafts are pointed directly towards celestial bodies: Alpha Draconis, Orion's Belt, Sirius, and Beta Ursa Minoris. Why? Like most things to do with the ancient pyramids, we have absolutely no clue. I mean, the pyramid was designed to be a tomb for a dead man, Pharaoh Khufu, who ruled during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom of Egypt. Why would he need ventilation and air shafts? Unless, of course, they served a different purpose. As I said, the shafts are aligned with celestial bodies: Alpha Draconis, the star closest to the North Celestial Pole; Orion's Belt, which consists of 3 stars that are aligned east to west; Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky; and Beta Ursae Minoris, the brightest star in the bowl of the Little Dipper Asterium. Asterium meaning a pattern of stars that are not directly belonging to a constellation. Basically, the shafts point upwards towards significant locations in what the ancient Egyptians likely considered to be the heavens, which could explain why they made them and why they aligned them the way they did, but also not how they did it. And unfortunately, right now, we just have to be okay with not knowing. Or assuming aliens were involved. Again, it's up to you.
Now, I mentioned a possible predecessor to the ancient Egyptians before, but what may have happened to this supposed possible earlier civilization? Well, perhaps the ancient Egyptians were descendants of a civilization that experienced cataclysmic events. Floods, earthquakes. These cataclysms may have destroyed an earlier advanced civilization, and the survivors fled to safer regions, eventually settling in what became ancient Egypt. Some of the knowledge and culture of the previous civilization could have been preserved by these people who integrated elements of that technology into the new culture, but not all of it, and this may help explain why there's still so much mystery surrounding the ancient Egyptians.
I want to circle back to the shafts real quick, because while the king's tomb opening up to the heavens is nice and all, there is actually another theory as to why they were built, and that is hydrogen power. Bear with me, because it is, according to British author Christopher Dunn, entirely possible that the pyramids were actually built as sophisticated power grids with the capabilities of harnessing hydrogen fuel and transmitting electricity. How? Well, according to Dunn, the pyramid's internal chambers and passageways were precisely designed to produce a chemical reaction that could generate hydrogen gas, which was then used to power some kind of electrical generator. Recent evidence proving the ancient Egyptians' abilities to create hydrogen gas using a chemical reaction involving iron and vinegar have only further supported this claim and led scientists to believe that the civilizations that built the pyramids might have been far more advanced than we could have ever imagined.
This next find is super recent and really goes to show just how much about the pyramids we still haven't discovered yet. Between 2021 and 2023, a team of archaeologists from Japan and Egypt used ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, to explore beneath Giza's Western Cemetery. GPR sends waves underground and captures their reflections, which can then be used to create 2D or 3D images of what's down there. Apparently, I don't really know how these things work. This is just what I've read. The data revealed two underground structures. There's a shallow structure shaped like an L, which is about 33 feet wide and 49 feet long, and a deeper structure 16 to 33 feet below the ground, covering roughly 33 square feet. And both structures were clearly man-made, which is very exciting because who knows what could be down there. There could be answers to some of the biggest mysteries surrounding the pyramids, and if you want to get really crazy, maybe we'll even find physical evidence of some form of advanced technology. One can dream.
With so many unknowns about the Great Pyramid, I figured it would be nice to talk about something that we do know, that the pyramid contains anomalous heat sources, and we have absolutely no idea why. In 2015, a thermal scan was conducted on the pyramids of Egypt. Not much surprising found in the first two, but the Great Pyramid showed 3 areas along the bottom that were producing an irregular amount of heat. While we are yet to determine the cause, it is believed that they might be hidden undiscovered passageways. Or they could have been caused by internal air currents, or perhaps the use of different building materials, but why? We just don't know. And until technologies improve, we will never know. There are, of course, some other less scientific theories out there that could explain the anomalies. Perhaps what was detected in the thermal scan are actually pieces of leftover, long-forgotten ancient technologies. Maybe the tech's hiding in both the graves and in the pyramid. Or maybe, just maybe, the entire Pyramid of Giza is an ancient alien spaceship. As the years pass, more and more heat spots have been discovered along the bottom of the pyramid. Perhaps for thousands of years, the ship has been harvesting the energy from the sun and creating its own hydrogen, and one day we will see the entire thing take off and head out towards the skies. I mean, it would answer a lot of questions, but of course, it would also open the floodgates to a whole lot more.